All right, everybody, as promised, we are here with a tidbit for our code challenge / news app. And we've coined the term at the moment, no BS news for Reddit. That's the name of the app that we're going for. That's the name of the app that we're planning on using, barring any sort of issue that we come up with. And we're going to be discussing today what we'll be doing in the code challenge. This is a tidbit episode, of course, since it is a rather short episode, and as a result, some of the stuff in this may change because it's basically almost like our web news section where we have a conversation, but it'll be specific about this. Now, I've written up a document that contains an abstract, the situation, the problem, and the solution for this app. I will be reading this. Again, all this stuff is subject to change as we will be doing it within the coding challenge. So I'm going to read through this, and then Mike and I will just kind of talk after this. And this is like the first draft of this document, so take it with a grain of salt here, people, but here we go. So the situation. Reddit offers users a curated list of links, photos, and videos from all over the internet. This curation is done by a large community via a ranking in brackets karma system and user comments, which are also curated via the same karma system. With such a large community spanning the entire globe, Reddit has become a haven for curated news from international news sources. Although not its official name, we'll refer to this as quote-unquote Reddit news throughout the document. So Reddit news is broken down into a variety of categories and sorting schemes in order to deliver what readers want to see. Generally, the breakdown goes as follows. So there are subreddits, and subreddits break down news in terms of region, so let's say country, continent, or even the whole globe. And then within these subreddits, there's various sorting methods that narrow down the news in a given subreddit. So these options are hot, new, controversial, top, and rising. Those sort the news articles within the subreddits to clarify that. So now we have the problem. So the problem is that Reddit news offers a similar problem to users that users are finding on other social media networks. Even though Reddit isn't necessarily maybe a social media network, maybe you wouldn't classify it as that in the traditional sense, it's actually a community. It's a community-driven content, comment, and karma systems put it in the same realm of other social media websites available today. So just like on Facebook where you can comment on things and like it and react and that type of thing, Reddit has the karma and comment systems that kind of bring it in line with it, although Facebook is more for like personal photos and you can post other stuff on there, but there's a clear difference if you're a Redditor, you can see, but there are several parallels, which is what I'm trying to get at. So the problem is with user distraction. Straight up, plain and simple, user distraction. With so much content put on Reddit each and every day, it is very easy for a user to get lost on the front page or in a random unrelated subreddit somewhere when their original goal was just to open the app and read the news. And this distraction leads to time loss and sometimes results in the user missing out on reading the news entirely if they don't have enough time to spare after their distraction. They got 5 minutes, they open it up, they want to read, the news for their country. They realize, oh, there's like some sort of funny dog video or something like that on the front page. They click on that. That takes up all their 5 minutes. They look at the time, they got to take off, they don't get to read the news, so they've been distracted and they wasted their time essentially. So in addition to this, a lot of news is now controversial these days. I'm not going to comment in detail on that type of stuff, but it is controversial these days. And as a result, there's like arguments and toxicity and all that stuff. And they all loom around the comment section on news posts. And this is not only on Reddit news. I'm not pointing the finger at Reddit news. This is on other news sites and anywhere you can really comment on news articles, Facebook, on the actual news outlets themselves, etc., etc., etc. So this can actually sour a user's perspective of a news story or just ruin their news reading experience and makes them feel bad if they have a different opinion than the person in the comments, whatever. So our solution, our proposed solution is that we want to make an app where users can simply read the Reddit news that they enjoy without having the distractions of Reddit as a whole. So we'll be cutting out things like the karma ratings, the user comments, and the unrelated subreddits. So users will simply be able to go to the news that they want to read using the subreddits and sorting that they prefer. So this also cuts out the Reddit community's comments and possible toxicity, but it keeps the valuable community curation of the various news links. So the actual Reddit links in the order that they're in the subreddits that they're in the sorting that they're in, we're going to maintain that. That's a very valuable part of having a very large community at Reddit, but you're cutting out and really you're kind of distilling all that out kind of thing. You're straining it out. So our goal To be plain and simple, our goal is to distill the value of Reddit news out of the distractions and the potential toxicity, So literally take the toxicity, take the arguments, and take the distractions and cut those out of you reading the news based on the community curated links. So now that's kind of where we're coming from this, that, all of us have been distracted by the front page. All of us have been pissed off by a comment, to be blunt. All of us have been, we've had issues with this type of stuff on social media. We have issues with this on there, and it shouldn't be affecting the news that you read. And so this is where this app comes in. So I'll kind of toss it now to Mike so he can kind of start talking about maybe some of the technical stuff or any comments he has.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the things when we were going through and trying to find a project that we can do in a kind of 24-hour or even like a 10, 12-hour period, we chose Reddit because, like you said, the curation is something that I value personally because I'm a pretty heavy Reddit user. And the other thing is that Reddit really is open with their API, and it's almost like not an API because it's a simple link you put in on any of the subreddits. You just put the kind of a .json at the end of it, and it responds with a whole JSON of that entire Reddit subreddit. So I think that combined with the fact that we're both getting tired of the toxicity in comments, and we're both getting tired of like the political, sides and stuff like that, where we just wanted to kind of give users an option that people can just go in, look at the news, get out. With the technology we have available, we wanted to do it in a day, so it kind of all worked out together in that sense. So I think what we should talk about right now, Matt, is what stack we are going to use. And we've mentioned this a couple times, but let's like nail it down and move forward with it. So the first thing is that we want to make this a PWA, so a progressive web application. This will allow it to be pretty much have native functionalities on iOS and Android. Now, from what I've read, the iOS native functionalities are limited as of right now compared to Android's. But from what we needed to do, it doesn't really matter. It'll just it'll make it look more like a fully fledged application on iOS for us, and that's all we really care about. Moving forward, though, if we were going to be doing any sort of not user authentication, but if we're going to be doing any sort of file management inside of the application, any sort of I think even push notifications or any sort of native functionality inside the app, it doesn't seem that PWA functionality is fully there yet on iOS, so we would have to look at a different solution. For this application, I don't see that as being a problem. Everything on Android works right out of the box. All the native functionality works no problem on PWAs. The add to home screen functionality works no problem. I've been using the Twitter PWA probably for the last year or so, and it's been doing great. It's nice and lightweight and fast, and I use it just because it was such an easy add to my screen. I didn't have to install anything, don't have to worry about updates. So what it'll allow is pretty much the use of offline mode. So if people, before they jump on a plane, if they were to visit our application, they could then be on the plane in airplane mode and still view all the news that was loaded previously in the application, which is kind of cool. I don't know if you have any comments on if you're okay or not with the PWA still. Any questions on the PWA, Matt?
I think the PWA is a good idea. I think it's because we want people to be able to use this on their phone, but we also want people to be able to use this on their computer. And I think that a PWA, especially for a code challenge, a 24-hour code challenge, is sort of exactly the route we want to go. The one question I do have is yes, of course, this requires Reddit. So yes, of course, it requires a data connection. And you were mentioning offline functionality. I don't think it would actually load those news articles though, right? Because our goal is to load those links, and then those links go directly to where the news is, just like Reddit does.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So no, you're right. It would not actually load those news links, but it'll load the titles, which contain a considerable amount of information on Reddit. If you go to the world news, a lot of the titles contain a fairly significant amount of stuff. Not that that's the only thing you should be reading. You should go and click on the links. But I mean, if you wanted to just quickly scroll through and look at the top news, you can get a lot of the, succinct information right there and then, which is kind of the value that I think Reddit has. So you can at least get that. The other thing we could technically do is we could preload those links, I believe. so that even if like they were to open it up and, you know, it could preload a bunch of links, maybe the top 10 or something like that, and then they would be potentially available for a person in offline mode. I believe that that's possible. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I could definitely look into it if that's something you think is a good feature to have.
I think it's an interesting one. One thing actually I will say is that I can see this, if it gets any sort of popularity and people actually like it, I can see, you know, maybe this will be in day one, but I can see that we're already thinking of improvements, which is good. Like, usually an idea will fall flat, in my opinion, if it has like a really basic version and we don't care to improve it. But that sounds like something that could be in an update as an improvement, not a part of the code challenge. I mean, it could be, like I said, like, I don't know. We have to kind of see. But in general, you know, that could be a version 1.1 or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, okay, so one of the things in the code challenges, I think the first thing we should do, and this is probably part of the code challenge, is to lay out the features that we want 100% in the application, and then have a list of nice to have features, kind of like a roadmap features, and maybe prioritize those as well. Because if we finish the application within like a few hours, then we want to be able to have something that we can add into it and extend the code challenge a little bit, make the application a little more usable. So I think that's something that we're going to kind of like, when we get to the spot where we're going to be doing it, we're going to kind of spend a good hour or two maybe planning out the day before we get into actually coding. I'm going to try to bring, I mean, it's been a really crazy week for both of us, but I'm going to try to bring wireframes there. At the very least, I do have 2 designs in my head, so I can always just make them quickly, because I'll be using Balsamic Cloud, and I don't need to use a prototyping software because it's a rather simple app. It's literally supposed to cut out all the stuff. So literally it'll just have a few buttons, and a lot of it hinges on that Reddit API, if we'll call it that, Reddit JSON thing. I think maybe we should continue our stat conversation, because I think it'll draw out more of these issues and comments we have. So like you mentioned PWA. So then now, like, what will we be building that on, do you think? Yeah. So I think we're going to be using something that we both kind of have started to integrate into our workflows, and that's Vue.js. So this may be slightly overkill for something like Vue.js, but I feel like a lot of it is reactive. If we ever want to do like live reloading, if we ever want to do, you know, infinite scroll, which we might do, I think Vue.js is great for that. You know, the state management aspect of it, the reactive aspect of it, just the building aspect. Like, I was looking into just making like a Webpack builder with Babel in it and stuff like that, but it seems to me that would be more work than just spinning up a Vue.js in the Vue CLI, which is the Vue command line interface that they have built into Vue.js, which is a great functionality. Definitely worth checking out. It makes it really easy to start a project, and it makes it really consistent as well, which I like. So every time you start a project, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. Now, this is all things you could make yourself, and you could build into a Webpack config file. But the fact that we would have to build that Webpack config, and we're both not like fully versed in Webpack, makes me think that Vue will just be the faster, more efficient, and better, like, for our own skills, like our own progression and skills to build this on. So that's kind of my logic for Vue. I don't know if you had any comments on Vue or not.
I think Vue's good too, because I like the components. I like being able to just sort of make the different. I think they're called components, right? I'm not not crazy.
Yep.
Okay,
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So just like being able to make, like, you know, a news tile or whatever I'm going to call it. Just like in the HTML, all the things website, we had like the hub and then a collection box, and then there was like the different titles and stuff, and it's all broken down, but they can all call each other. I think this makes sense because we'll be calling like this content box, if you will, this news box over and over and over and over and over again. And we'll be constantly doing that, because it'll be, you know, as you scroll down, more and more and more stories, essentially. That's actually one thing we need to determine, is how many stories we want to load, you know, 100 or whatever. But But yeah, I think that Vue is a really good idea. I think we're familiar with it, and we might as well do it. And unless you have anything else to say about Vue, I was going to mention something about the CSS part.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I think I'm good with you.
Just because it sparked my with familiarity. So we've mentioned in the past that we were going to do it in Grid because I'm learning Grid. We've actually decided to probably do this in Flexbox. Again, not in Stone, but it doesn't make sense to try to use a technology that I'm new to when there's one that I'm used to so readily available, especially in a coding challenge. Obviously, like, there's a value in learning CSS Grid, but I'm not trying to learn something in this coding challenge necessarily. Like, we will be kind of going on the learning train for the PWA and that type of stuff.
Yeah, you're trying not to learn too much. Like, you don't want to make it the whole, like, PWA. Vue.js is kind of still new for you, and then on top of that with CSS Grid, I feel like that would be kind of like a learning overload. You want to have some sort of like knowledge base that you want to, like, fall back on that makes this more comfortable for you.
Yeah, because it's like if a project came to us, like a client project came to us and we needed to use CSS Grid, I could, work through it. But this is like every time I spend 5 minutes looking something up, whereas I just know how to do it in Flexbox, is 5 minutes gone out of the challenge, and it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to do it. So I think we'll be more than likely adjusting it to Flexbox and, using the skills I have in CSS. Vue.js, of course, like we said, is new, but I still know that enough. But CSS Grid, I'm just getting started. So that's one adjustment for sure I think we'll be doing. But I think that points out an interesting thing is that we're not using some crazy UI builder. We'll just be building essentially a regular web page in Vue.js with CSS and like some native CSS features and HTML. I don't think I was going to say maybe I'll use Sass or something, but I don't even think it really needs it in this particular project. I don't believe it does.
I agree with you there. I feel like Sass and Less and all that is really valuable and important to learn, but I feel it's more valuable as soon as you get to larger teams and you want kind of repeatable code environments and conformity. And that's the same thing I would say with TypeScript, which is a typable version of JavaScript. So typing is allowed, like typecasting. That usually, like, if you look it up online, people will rave about it and say like, oh, it's the next big thing. But another thing people say, and I agree with this, is that it's not really required for someone doing like a 2-man project. Like if you're in a small team, TypeScript might not be for you because it does provide that, like, have that overhead of A, you're going to have to learn it, and B, you're going to have to kind of, it is a little bit more complicated to write, which is a good thing because it should be a little bit difficult. Like it should be a little bit more clear when you're typing in JavaScript, like when you're putting in a, is this a integer? Is this a string? Is this whatever? Like JavaScript is very loose with that, and it's not very good in determining what everything is. It kind of does its own thing. It should be more clear. But when you know what you're doing and you've worked with vars and lets and all that for your entire career, it's not so bad. But as soon as you bring more people on, it can get confusing. So I think it's important in that sense.
I would agree. I would agree with that. It kind of comes with the territory of like the big companies are bureaucratic and the smaller companies are more agile. Mm-hmm. It's because they don't necessarily need to fill out the paperwork and they don't necessarily need to write everything down in their project manager. I mean, admittedly, that's ideal, but that is overhead. So it's the same kind of thing, right? Technical overhead or logistical overhead or administrative overhead. Overhead is overhead. It takes time. And especially if we're doing a coding challenge and it's just us two, the person who's reading the news, chances are that they're not a web developer. And if they're using this app, they're not going to be like, man, it would have been easier if they used TypeScript. They're going to be like, oh, I can read my news from CBC or whatever, right? Yeah. That's the whole thing. So I think our stack is good. Like I think our stack is kind of locked down. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to be using DigitalOcean, I believe you said, for the host as well.
Yeah, we're just going to get like the basic plan on DigitalOcean to start off because of the scaling aspect of it. We don't really need a database. It's another thing I wanted to mention actually is I don't think we're going to do any kind of serious security on this because we're not going to do any login, at least for version 1. So people won't need to log into their Reddit usernames. They won't need to log into like a separate username to manage the application. I think we're going to do just kind of local storage, and we'll store some cookies here and there on their local devices just for settings options and stuff like that. But other than that, it's going to be a full, risk-free environment where we're not going to ask for any permissions that I know of, and we're not going to force the user to have to put in passwords or anything. So I don't think it's beneficial for this application if we're not going to allow them to comment, or we're not going to have that functionality. I don't think they need to log in and have to, you know, put another risk of putting in their credentials somewhere else.
And I think that almost is adding BS to the no BS news app, right? Yeah. You're adding like, oh, now I got to log in, but for what reason? You know, I'm not commenting, I'm not using the karma. And a lot of people that read Reddit news, and I don't have the numbers, but I would assume that they're just people that go to Reddit. I bet you a lot of people aren't logged in. I know that from subreddits I've been on, there's like 100,000 or 200,000 active people, let's say, and the people will report 2 million unique hits. So it's like such a small portion is actually a Redditor, if you will, or a person that's signed in. So like in this case, I think it's absolutely unnecessary. So and like everything's public anyway. Like we're not pulling anything that's private. It's like all public. Exactly. So it's like you want to hack into our JSON. Well, that's the Reddit's JSON, and that's public. So
and we're not really targeting the typical Redditor, the person that wants to comment and that wants to participate in discussions. That's not our audience. Our audience is more the person that just needs a quick fix of the news in, you know, and that's it. Like a quick fix of the curated news, and that's about it.
This is a very minimalist app. Like if you're a minimalist, this is probably, if you're a minimalist and you like to read the news and you like the Reddit curated news from multiple sources, this is probably going to be the app for you, I would say.
Yeah,
for sure. The only other thing I think that is a wild card for us is the ads. We've mentioned this before. So we want to monetize it with ads because, well, first of all, we want to learn that. Second of all, we need money too, to be blunt. But the only thing we haven't done is tested it. So we've if you've listened to previous episodes, we had to confirm our address or something like that. Excuse me. We had to confirm our address in the whole Google Ads thing because we're using Google AdWords or AdSense or whatever it's called. So we're using that service. We had to do like an address confirmation and all that stuff. So we've done that. And so our account is no longer administratively blocked in that way. We just have never put ads into this. This hasn't been approved. So maybe there won't be ads for a couple of days and whatever. That's the only real wild card. Like we have experience with at least every piece other than, so PWA and then AdSense, I guess, are the two wild cards, I would say. And the one other thing I really want to bring up is what is our end game? So let's say you make, obviously the app, right? You make the app, it's working, it's designed the way we want. We test it on a few different phone sizes. We test it on a couple of resolutions. You know, we test it for an hour, let's say, whatever. It's working. It's fine. But we're missing, let's say, the ads and we don't have the hosting up. Is that a complete? Is that like I mean, no one's scoring us. So I mean, we can just say like we did this code challenge, we completed this app, but we're going to need an extra day to put it up. Is that considered logistical, or is that considered something that should be in the code challenge? Like what if we can't get ads the first day? Are we going to release it on the store? Because then all the buzz is gone. Like there's a question right there. If we have a big buzz, you know, we could be missing out on say $100 or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Like, are we gonna release it, or we want to say, oh, the app's done, guys, we're just gonna release it next week? You know.
I honestly think that the end game is to just have it hosted on the DigitalOcean platform as a PWA, so that people can add it to their phone. That's the end of the challenge aspect of it. After that, like you said, putting it on the store or whatever, that's an after. We'll have a discussion after the whole challenge about like where to go with that. But like I think to be a completely successful challenge or a successful challenge in any way, we should have it on the DigitalOcean platform with the features that we plan out at the start of the day, in you know, not a buggy mess format. That's where I think it should be. Ads or no ads, I don't think it matters too much. As like, if you want, we could hold back on advertising it until the ads get out there, but I don't think it's going to matter too much in any sense. So
yeah, I would agree. Like I think that's a good goal too, is is like, I mean, at the end of the day, if it's one of those things where we need to put it out into production and have them approve the ad, like approve the site and then put the ads on anyway. Like, I'm not trying to sound like I'm trying to, like, I don't want to sound like the super capitalist here where I'm like, no, I want money from everything. But like, I do want to monetize this because I do think this is a good idea. And like, obviously we're a business, so we need to monetize. And I think that this conversation is important because I bet, like, I'm sure that people have had this type of conversation in the past, not necessarily relating to a code challenge. But like, you know, they've been like, do we release this because we're not approved for ads, or do we release this before we get a sponsorship, or whatever you're building? You know, that's a conversation to be had. But I think that's a good point to reach. I think that's a good one. Is we release it on DigitalOcean, so it's in production in some way, and maybe the app stores will be a roadmap item. Like like you were saying, like maybe we'll write it down or just have a roadmap in our heads. And then we'll be doing it. But actually, saying stuff like that is like, or to clarify, is we're going to be doing like social media coverage on this. Hopefully, we've never done this. We've never done the challenge. We've never done PWA. Never done anything like this, and we've never done social media coverage of something. I'm not saying like CES coverage where we're going to be live all day. It ain't going to happen. But we're going to be posting pictures and things that we're doing during this challenge. Hopefully, some Instagram stories. Instagram's kind of our main platform, but we'll maybe post some stuff on Twitter and Facebook as well. Twitter more than likely. Facebook is kind of like I haven't really found a place for our Facebook other than just posting stuff we're doing. So I mean, like, there will be a post on there, but if you're looking for more, you know, if you're just like checking in on us throughout the day, it'll be probably on Instagram for the majority of it, whether it be videos or photos or whatever. That's more than likely where they will be, because that's where we'll be doing it. And we should announce the day, too. I don't think we actually announced the formal day. So we're actually planning on doing this on Monday, January 14th. Now, this episode is being recorded as of the 11th of January. However, we don't know whether we want to release it as like a launch to the thing. So you might be listening to this actually on the 14th, and you could actually go and check out what we're doing right now.
Yeah, you should tell them where they can find us.
Tell us where they can find. Oh, you mean like the actual social?
Yeah,
social
exactly.
Things. This is an unscripted episode, people. Clearly, it's a tidbit. So yeah, so on Instagram, it's at HTML all the things. The same are on Twitter. It's at HTML everything. And if you just look us up on Facebook, we're on there, of course. And I think really that I was gonna say Snapchat, but like we're not on nope. Snapchat. Clearly not a scripted episode, people. Like I usually have a scripted ending, so I remember all this stuff. But yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at HTML all the things. You can find us there. If you're already following us there, that's great. And as always, if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/HTML all the things to monetize this episode. Talking about monetization.
Monetize everything.
Monetize everything. But yeah, I think that really covers it. So yeah, so basically, real basic summary of what we're gonna do. We're gonna try to build this app. We're naming it, as of right now, the No BS News for Reddit app. That's gonna be probably released, or it's gonna be released as a PWA. We've just discussed the stack. We want to release it on the mobile stores, which is probably gonna be a roadmap item. As a part of the code challenge, we will have some or all design things done before, and the actual making of the app. So the actual, you know, me using the CSS and HTML and Vue.js, Mike using the Vue.js with all of his backend stuff and the API or, you know, Reddit JSON calls, all that type of stuff. The creation of it itself will be done during that day. It's a 24-hour challenge. First time doing this. Something's going to go wrong. I'm just telling you now. I'm just telling you right now that something's probably definitely going to go wrong. It's our first time. So we're just going through this right now. So yeah, so depending on when you're listening to this, depending on when we release this, the code challenge itself is going to be happening on the 14th. That's January 14th of 2019, in case you're listening to this way in the future or way in the past somehow. A little bit of X-Files music. And I think that's really it. I think we've kind of really beat this thing to death. It's a pretty simple app. So unless you have any other comments, Mike, I think we can close out this tidbit because it's already at 30 minutes or around there. Yep. So yeah, so thanks for listening, everybody. Like I said, at HTML all the things on Instagram, at HTML everything on Twitter. We may be on Facebook. Just look us up on there. HTML all the things. There's a page. You'll see us on there. I may be posting on there, but Instagram and Twitter will be the main ones, and we'll be doing this on the 14th of January 2019, and it's a 24-hour challenge. And thank you for listening.